Right. Did you have time to look at any of the
No.
resources? Right.
Sorry.
So it's episode 489. So do your countdown. Go straight into it.
Copy you. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 489 of the Mail Right Podcast. We are so excited to bring today's subject. There's no more important subject if you are a new real estate agent trying to figure out how to be successful in 2026. It's a new world that we live in. Before we get started with the show, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Inbound REM and Mail-Right. MailRight is an all-in-one tool. John can speak to it more when he introduces himself. And Inbound REM is probably one of the leading providers of information to real estate agents in all aspects of their career, as well as a provider of websites and SEO and AIO. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask my amazing, brilliant co-host to introduce himself and let everybody know who he is in case you don't already know. John?
Oh, thanks, Rob. I'm the joint founder of mail-right.com. We provide fantastic looking websites, a CRM, and a number of other digital elements to help you get some quality leads. Back over to you, Rob.
For that small handful of you who may be do-it-yourselfers and you are wondering what is a great resource to build a WordPress website, may I recommend, please, John's other podcast, WP Tonic, one of the largest podcasts on the subject of WordPress that exists. He's been doing it for a very long time. It's a far larger show than this particular one is, and he has gotten some of the best guests in the entire world on this particular subject. So if you haven't already done it, go ahead and check out WP Tonic. If you're looking for how-tos, check out inboundrem.com, and you can find out how to do many of the things that we'll talk about in more detail than we are likely to talk about on the podcast today. With no further ado, we are going to talk about some strategies. Now, if you've been a long-time listener to the podcast, this may not necessarily be the episode for you because we've talked about some of these things before. However, if you're a new agent, this is definitely 100%, no doubt about it, the podcast that you want to be listening to at this exact second. Why? Establishing career and having a plan, a business plan, while maybe not discussed much with you in general, if you're not planning to succeed, you're planning to fail. That is an old saying that's been around for a long time, and I couldn't agree more with the idea that it's really important to get a game plan in place. Today, our objective here on this podcast is to give you a couple of ideas about where and how to start that game plan. Things that you may not have considered, or perhaps things that you can, and we're just going to remind you why you should do them. John, when you were starting let's just say any of your new podcasts, because I think you've got a couple and that I know of, and maybe you've done more that I don't necessarily know of. When you're planning for some new project, how do you kick that off?
Well, I didn't plan the WP Tonic. I was working for a regional digital agency, Noble Studios. They're still in business in Reno. And I did my degree in the UK and I did an associate degree in the US. And then I got a job with Noble Studios. And then I was asked to do by somebody I met at a local event that was into a bit of an amateur sound audio guy, and he wanted to do a podcast, and he wanted to know more about WordPress, so he said, why don't we do it together? So that wasn't really that planned, to be truthful, Robert. I do the Membership Machine show, and that's been doing that for about 3 years, and that's really focused at the target audience of the WP Tonic business. And I do this podcast with you.
But okay, so let's just talk the Membership Machine show. I think I know the answer, but I know the audience doesn't. So you decide to start not one, not two, but a third podcast, because I know this one has been going longer than 3 years. I've been on it with you for almost 3 years. Yeah. So what was what made you think that was the strategy you wanted to pursue, and how did you kind of come to a resolution and say, okay, it's worth yet more of my time to do yet another podcast?
Well, it's more focused at our target audience, because the WP Tonic, we're a boutique hosting and support company for those that want to run a membership community focused website on WordPress. the membership machine show, we not only cover WordPress, we cover the SaaS alternatives and the marketing, and we mix it all up. But it is very much targeted at those that want to build a real business around learning, e-learning.
Mm-hmm. So you saw the need because you were already in the niche, and you saw the need and you decided, I'm going to serve the need that I think is there.
Yeah, where the WP Tonic, I keep it going because I've met so many people and it's built influence and all the backlinks and all the SEO and the domain authority that WP Tonic gets. It's still and the sponsorship I get, which isn't enormous but it's reasonable. So there's a lot of benefits of keeping that show going, but it's not targeted at my target audience. It's aimed at WordPress freelancers, higher end implementers, really people that really interested in WordPress.
So the point of that series of questions, ladies and gentlemen, and John participating in that little conversation there, is to show you an example of building out a business strategy. In this particular case, there was somebody who was already dabbling in to put this specifically into real estate terms. Let's just say you're walking into the real estate business and you're doing what every real estate agent pretty much I've ever met does. You're saying, I just want to sell homes anywhere, any type, right? So you start to do that, however you do it. You knock on doors, you get leads from Zillow, you do whatever you do, you sell a few homes. And you start to realize that people are probably asking you questions about maybe a specific real estate type, condos, waterfront, investment, I can go on and on. And you start to think, oh, it seems like a lot of people are asking me about second home investment property. So maybe I should start to focus on that. That right there is a business strategy. That is a business plan. That is the beginning of one, at least. That is the thought that maybe there is a specific audience I can appeal to directly and have a better job of generating business there. Would you agree with my outline?
Yeah, I do. I think when you're starting off, you know, it's roadkill. Whatever comes on your radar, you've got to go for it. But you should have a strategy. And we've discussed this in a few of the episodes. The more, after a certain period of time, the more you can find a niche. Obviously, a lot of people listening to this podcast are going to be shouting out, well, I don't live in a big enough area or city to be able to have a niche. But I don't agree with that. I think the bread and butter, it really depends on what area you're doing business in. But let's say you're in the $300-400 that the bread and butter is where I would want to start off with. That's where I feel that's where the real money is. I know there's some real luxury people that have really done fantastic. That's great for them, but I think the real money is in the bread and butter. But you can still find a niche in that bread and butter market, as I call it.
So I guess I am, and we're moving down a series of bullet points, and I'm doing it a little bit more fluid today. But John, what do you think? Like, if I was to ask you this question, like as a less experienced business person than you are, and say,
I think you're much more experienced than me. I've just done what I've had to do. I've run a dry cleaning business, very successful in the UK. I run it for 23 years, and I got into web development, and I run a couple of businesses. So I've actually only run 3 businesses in the whole of my business career, Robert.
Which is so still the question is going to prevail, which is what do you think is relevant about a sales strategy in 2026? Just best guess, like riff and put yourself maybe in the shoes of a real estate salesperson.
Well, I think it's really understanding the realities of the market. You know, 75% of real estate agents don't sell one house, one property in the whole year. It's disastrous. You know, 75% drop out in less than 5 years. A production of 2 million. it sounds a lot, but when you look at the net amount, it's not very good. You've got to be looking at least 4 million in production, at least 13 to 15 properties per year. You got, and then you're probably, after you take what the broker wants, the federal tax, the state tax, the running costs, you take it all out, you probably end up with a gross of about 45 to 50,000 at 4 million production. A lot of agents are part-time, so they can run their business at a lower, and this is not an attack at the brokerage. A lot of the traditional brokerages aren't making an enormous amount of money. It's a big problem in the real estate industry, a lack of profitability.
Sure. I'm going to riff on something that you just said, John. And I'm going to say that while it wasn't specific in the title of the podcast, there's a really important part, because this is, do you understand the sales environment in 2026? And I think that most agents actually don't understand the sales environment, not because, and I mean it from the perspective that you just brought up. They don't understand the sales environment through the eyes of the broker that they're potentially signing up with. Because most brokerages, especially with the proliferation of what are called digital brokerages, anybody listening to the show that is identifying as a new agent should probably already know what that is. But in case you don't, it's like EXP or Real are two of the bigger examples. They are brokerages that don't have offices, they don't have brick and mortar, and their model really is recruiting agents en masse. But different brokerages, especially smaller, local, regional ones who have to compete against all these newfangled brokerages, now they may provide some value when you sign up underneath them, because they probably have an existing environment where they're going to provide some leads and maybe some mentorship, which is something farther down on our list in terms of strategy today. But let me tell you, digital brokers provide none of that. They provide you online mentorship, yes. They provide you digital mentorship, yes. But part of your sales strategy for 2026 needs to be, first and foremost, in the planning stages, understanding the kind of person that you are. Can you learn virtually? Because if the answer is no, you've eliminated a lot of the places that you would work. Okay, because even some of the traditional brokerages have gone into a no office model where you don't have to come into the office and you don't have to sit down at a desk. Most good brokerages with good strategies will insist that you come and sit in what's called the bullpen and still sit in the office. These days, the bullpen is not so much about people walking through the doors, no matter what they tell you. There's a few exceptions, but most of the time, foot traffic is minimal. What it does do, though, is give you an opportunity to be around other, more experienced salespeople and pick up tips. So if you're an in-person learner, you need to probably go with a more traditional brokerage that has some of those strategies in place. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do. But like point two, you've been in sales all your life. Mm-hmm. I'm in sales. I'm in sales myself now. You got to understand the sales process. You got to understand that you can't be the invisible agent. You got to understand, whatever is contacting well, I've been critical of just general phoning, but when it comes to expires, yeah, it's a tough market. The good thing about hitting expires is you've got to learn your scripts and you've got to get some training, and it's just good training. You're going to harden up because you're going to get a bit of abuse when you ring up expires, but after you've done a lot of it, it becomes water on the duck's back. But I just think it hardens you up to do expires, to hit them up. But you gotta understand you're there to get leads. The broker ain't gonna get you leads.
Sure, which is sales skills 101. And most people hitting real estate, the 75% failure rate that John mentioned, which is a true statistic, he mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, is because most real estate salespeople, and don't ask me why, they've dropped the salespeople out of their title. And they forget that if you're going to get into this career, you're getting into a sales career, and the old adage in sales still applies. I did my sales comeuppance in the hardest way possible. I did a lot of hand-to-hands on the street, and I learned a lot of scripts from a lot of different people I worked for, and I did the script exactly as I was told to do it. And I learned the pros and cons of whatever that is. Now, the old school people that are out there that will still train you using scripts is like Mike Ferry. Tom Ferry and most other people have gone into a more fluid type of teaching, which is not necessarily good depending on what kind of learner you are. If you're a learner that's going to do best, if you know exactly what you're supposed to say, believe it or not, old school brokerages are probably, again, the best bet for you.
Can I just quickly say something about that? It's about you're going to get the same objections coming up. You've got to know how to handle them with aplomb. But you're going to be confronted. If you're dealing with the same industry, you're going to hear the same objections. You've got to have a methodology to overcome objections. And the best way is to train. If you're blabbering or you get worked up when you hit objection, and you're going to hit objections all the time, you need some training because you need to get out of the game quick. It's really quite simple, isn't it?
It really is. And we're going to, on that great point, we're going to go to break. I want to thank John, and I want to thank the companies that provide us the ability to do this podcast for you, Inbound REM and MailRight, or MailRight and Inbound REM. It's Mail-Right if you want to check them out. It's MAIL-RIGITH, or if I spelled that correctly, .com. And Inbound REM is INBOUNDREM.com. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. When we come back from break, we're going to get into some of the more nitty gritty stuff, the difference between busy work and lead gen work, building a referral network, using a CRM, and then we're going to have some closing thoughts. So stay tuned for that great stuff, especially if you're a new agent. We can't wait to share with you. We'll be right back. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's episode number 489 of the MailRight podcast. Today's episode is quite special because we are speaking to an audience that we don't have time to address nearly enough. That is the brand new agent. And we're talking to the new agent about how to succeed. In the first part of the episode, we talked about some do's and don'ts about choosing brokers, and we did a little bit of a riff on how to identify a market. We used John as a live example in how to do that. In this part of the podcast, we're going to talk about the difference between, we're going to start off by talking about the difference between busy work and real estate lead generation work. I'm going to ask John to kick off that subject because he did some proper due diligence on some of these topics. I have some things to add based on my own personal experience, but John, take it away.
Yeah, I think a lot of those that start in as newbies, they fill their days with what I call busy work. They fill their days with endless social, and I believe in social media. If you've got strategy, you know what you're doing. I think I said before the break, I think contacting expires is a good idea because it toughens you up, and you've got to get some script training. But I think it can work in getting some money, basically, get the ball rolling. I think social media, having a social media strategy, we've discussed this in a number of episodes. You can look for it, folks. We've said video is king. in I don't know how many bloody times we've said that over the last episodes. I think finding a mentor, somebody who is a producer that actually sells 20, 30, 40, 60 houses a year, and just doing the donkey work that helps them, and they become your mentor. You'll do the open housing, you'll go round the buyers, show them around all the donkey work. As long as they're prepared to show you their processes, I think it's well worth. So finding a local mentor that's a real producer is really important. I don't think you're going to get certain amount of training from certain brokerages, national, but I think finding a real local mentor that's a real producer, and you're going to have to. That sounds like donkey. That's more productive donkey work, busy work than filling your days with whatever your brokerage tells you to do, in my opinion. I don't know what you think.
I think that these are all good points, and I think that you've made them well. I'm gonna go a little deeper in a slightly different direction, but add a little bit of context. So if for some reason you're sitting here going, Robert, I don't want to learn how to be a salesperson, like not a professional one, not go through hours of sales training and hire a Tom Ferry who's going to put a business coach on you and teach you things like alternate choice closes and try to coach you up to do the discipline to knock on doors or make phone calls. Let's just say none of that is your jam, but you still want to be a real estate agent. All right. Let's take that video comment. Video is probably one of the best lead generation strategies that a new agent can consider if they don't have sales experience. If you're not the closer of all closers, you can use a very minor amount of video editing skills and a little bit of discipline to go out and do things like walk through listings that are available for you to walk through and stuff like that, and do a little bit of research, try to add a little bit of context to stuff that people may have not talked about the listing, certain elements of the listing that may or may not have been highlighted in the listing pictures online. So it requires a little bit of research, camera, and discipline. And with that, you can just, with a license, a real estate license, you can post that content to Instagram, Facebook, and many other places where with a very minor amount of research, like you could use some of the work that I've done on inboundrem.com and reference some of our articles, and you can figure out how to hashtag and do all the stuff for real estate that you need to do. That might give you a way to generate some leads. It might give you a way to grow an audience, and it might give you a way to backdoor a start to your real estate career. Now, that's the real estate media strategy. My comment about mentorship. Thank you once again to Alan Jacob, Lenny Goldsmith, Bill Haberstadt. These are people that took the time and energy when I was very young to teach and train me, discipline me down, provide gentle leadership, and help me like refine my skill set as it relates to being a salesperson. And in some ways, an entrepreneur. And with Alan Jacob, it was 100% leader. I didn't learn as much about sales from Alan, but I learned a massive amount about leadership. And these are people that yes, they were making commission off me. They were making money off me. So that's the thing that you have to understand about mentors. There are many people who set themselves up in a position where they're going to make money if you're successful. And those are in my opinion, are some of the people that you really want to look for. Now, Lenny Goldsmith is the rarest of the rare. A guy I sat next to who just decided to mentor me out of the goodness of his heart with no compensation of any kind ever. And I did not a lot. I did some donkey work for him. I brought him stuff. I did some busy work for him every now and again. I listened to some of his bad jokes because he was an entertainer and wanted to entertain. I did a lot of those things in order to facilitate value so that he in turn would allow me to sit next to him, because at the time it was an allow thing. He got to choose who sat next to him. He was one of the top producers for a reasonably decent sized company. There was no sitting next to him if he didn't want you to. So that was an interesting experience. You have to figure out what you can do. It can be listening to somebody, running work for them.
Yeah. But do you think, I think it's really worthwhile, because you got to get up and running quick. And if somebody who's a top producer is taking you on, the amount you're going to learn, you're going to learn a lot, I would have thought.
I learned most of what I know. If I tried to put into value what these three people taught me, I mean, any success that I've had, it all can be attributed to them. Billy Haberstadt was the very first guy that taught me how to use marketing statistics in terms of running call centers. He was the most important of all the mentors because he got me off the ground and allowed me to speak in such a way that people took me seriously. It was all Billy Haberstadt, and I was 19. So, find a mentor if you can. Yeah. That is, to me, I cannot stress enough. It's such an old school thought. If you find a digital mentor you like Neil Patel is one of my mentors too, but I've never talked to the guy. So anyway, we'll move on because John's getting antsy. How would you advise a realtor to build a referral network?
Well, it's just like we said in previous podcasts, this is all stuff that we've discussed, isn't it? You can't be the invisible real estate agent, have you? You've got to get out there, go to any free activity or group, as long as it's free. Don't stick your card in front of people, though. I hate that. But, engage in conversations, tell them that you're a real estate agent, keep going to these events. You're going to have, your aim is to get one home bought or sold each month. If you can't, after 6 months, do one a month, I think you've got a problem if you're doing this full time. And you got to get up to like 30, 60 sales per year, really, if you're going to make. So you got to get at it, all right? So building building relations, that's what this bloody business is about. It's about digital marketing and building real relationships in your area. That's what it's about. It's about referral linked to digital marketing. They're the two things that work in 2026. So you've got to get out there, talk to people, build relationships, be generous, help them. Hopefully they help you. You got to get out there.
It's funny that you listed this because you're right. We've talked about it a lot. And I talk to a lot of real estate agents, and I sometimes talk to them about, like, when I talk to them about one of my first opening questions when people are calling in for a consult is like, where are you getting your leads from? And there's lots of different places that people list. It has been a very long time since an agent called into me and said to me, I am actually making 40% of my income off referral networks. He was doing it all digitally. And I'm just going to give you some stuff that people forget right out of the top of your head. Like, number one, he is on a service called US News Real Estate. It's a section of a big news site that you can list yourself as an agent. He is on there. He's on HomeLight, which most of you have heard of. He's on Coldwell Banker. He's on a website that somebody else produced called 30 Destin Homes. He's also on Zillow. Referral networks in today's world, ladies and gentlemen, are every place that you can post a profile that is relevant. He's got 7 5-star reviews on Realtor.com. He's got 7 on Zillow. He's got 3 on Facebook and 5 on LinkedIn. This guy is a master of the referral network strategy. He builds out a profile. He gets a couple of reviews. He makes sure a couple people post reviews there. And he had a numbers mentality. When I asked him, because I asked him, John, how many of these places are paying you out? He says about 10 referral networks send me at least 1 deal a year. I was flummoxed.
Yeah.
I have not heard of anybody being.
I haven't heard that one. But I did say that I think face-to-face and digital, the problem with a lot of agents, they can do the face-to-face, but they can't grasp their mind of the digital, or they go fully digital. I think the real success stories, especially if you can combine both.
I agree, which leads to an interesting thing. So there is a term that we use all the time on the show, CRM, Customer Record Management System. I said this in one of the podcasts a couple years back. And here's what I want to say before we even start talking about the subject. Most of these systems, which are called CRMs, are really not fair to call them CRMs. They're really everything RMs. They're all relationship management combined into one. They're your task tracker. They're your email sender. They remind you when to do things and how to do things, and which gets put under the umbrella of CRM. But I use my CRM to tell me what to do with my day, to track phone calls, to create calendar events, sometimes related to work and sometimes not. They're basically a total schedule like creator and minder, which is how I think most people use CRMs these days. They manage most of your schedule off like using a core tool. Now, John's point here, for those of you that are going to go and download the show notes, which all of you should, on the mail-right.com website, and maybe mine, but probably his, use a CRM. It doesn't really matter which one that you start with. Just find one that you can use and use it. And I agree with that 1,000%. Find something that's going to organize your work and your personal into a schedule that you can manage. For those of you who have kids or are working real estate part-time, you'll understand how important this is. Like, especially if you're trying to do 2 careers at once as you transition over into real estate, you're going to really want to pick like a one-size-fits-all tool to start with, and then you're going to want to learn it as well as you possibly can, only in trying to remind yourself how to use your time to best effect, which is anything that's not a sales activity is not best effect. Now, if you're using lead generation through video, you want to create as many videos as you have time to do. If you're doing door knocking, you want to knock on doors. If you're doing referral networking, you want to start a new site or a new referral network site, or you want to go to an event or a PTA meeting or any of the places that you can go where you can meet people and start to build out a referral network. That's my hot take on this. What do you have to say about CRMs?
Yeah, you just putting information in it, and there are various methodologies about how you use the CRM, but you want to put information about conversations. So none of us got a perfect memory. So, and you should have your hot, warm, and lukewarm or cold. And it's those, because we've discussed this endlessly, haven't we? The buying cycle. Not everybody is a hot lead ready to buy or sell right now, but they could be a warm. They're looking to move or sell the house in 6 months. You need to keep in contact with those people. The other people might be 18 months out. But we've discussed this endlessly as well, haven't we?
We have. I've got 4. We're gonna close out. For those of you looking for some ideas, I'm gonna give you 4 5, 6 reasonably good places to start. John and I both have some reasonably good content that could be leveraged to start a real estate business. And I'm not going to say our URLs again because I've already dropped them both like 4 times this episode. I'm also going to add a couple of names to the list that I respect. You've got Ricky Caruth, who is really good if you're cold calling. You've got Jimmy Burgess, who is a one-size-fits-all guy that you
I like Jimmy's stuff. He's not slimy, is he?
No.
He's education, but he's not slimy, is he?
Not even a little bit. You've got Kyle Handy, especially if you're going to join EXP. Ricky Caruth is the same. You've got, and that name again was Kyle Handy. Okay, interesting guy if you want to track some statistics for how much you might earn doing some of these things. You've got Tom Ferry at Top Level Motivation, but I don't know that a brand new agent is really going to learn how to be a better agent straight off Tom Ferry. It would take a lot of work to go through all this content, I think.
Well, I got one on my list. I was really impressed with. It's a guy from Florida, and it's Joan Brooks.
Okay, is that one of the 3 references?
It's the top YouTube video, and he's got YouTube, and he's got a couple of videos, and he's independent brokerage. Him and his wife. I think they've done well. They've done well in less than 4 or 5 years, but they're not idiots. And he'd done the first video, and it really does highlight the lack of profitability that a lot. But but to be fair, if you just want to do this part time, obviously the costs are totally different for somebody that's doing it full time, aren't they? It's a totally different animal, isn't it? But if you're doing this full time and you really want to, the realities are quite shocking, but it doesn't mean you can't be as successful. But you got to educate yourself quick, and you've got to get real about this quick.
You do indeed. And somebody, again, probably one of my mentors said, half in is a half win. And that's a term I've remembered for the entirety of my career in life. Half in is a half win. And it's pretty difficult to get to look at anything as a half and think that it's going to be wildly successful. I have started plenty of careers while working part-time in one and part-time in another, plenty. And I finally realized very late in life, like in my 40s, that there was really not a brass ring at the end of the half-in thing that was worth having. So I went all in with like inbound REM. I did work 2 jobs to afford the money to save for inbound REM. And then what I did is I started inbound REM properly by going all in, from the very first moment I decided, like I got the incorporation license and kind of said, and now we're on. It makes a big difference, but it is very risky. That's why entrepreneurship and everything else that carries huge rewards, the reason that not like the vast
Yeah, but
majority of people.
I just want to say something, and I'm not diminishing what you're just saying because you're sharp. But what I mean is, you were the couple of jobs or the main job you were doing, you were building relationships with the people that you're going to do your main business in anyway. So you had some people that would take your calls, that would listen to you. That's cute. I started Mailrite and I didn't have any relationships in the Mailrite in the real estate industry. That wasn't very clever. But you only know what you know, don't you? So you were much sharper than me.
I mean, I just had done it and failed more times is what it was, John. I had, by the time I started Inbound REM, I tried 7 other businesses and run countless others for other people and made money as a commission-only salesperson for close to 25 years. Because even when I worked for others, I worked for them differently than most people would.
Right.
So but that's where my advice comes from. Being successful is a road. And it's a long one. So those of you who are new into a real estate career, planning to be successful long-term is understanding there's a lot of hard work between you and the end goal. Start with a plan. Start with a small plan so that it's easy, something to generate yourself some leads, to get yourself some business, and plan to fail a lot. Plan on it. Because in failure comes the lessons. In the lessons comes the learning. In the learning comes the success. And it is one thing I will say about you, John, and I've said this many times, you are a determined, consistent person. And we've talked about it offline, and we're not going to talk about it online because I don't want to put anything business of John's on the street, but I've heard you have plenty of challenges. And yet, get up.
Everybody in business has loads of challenges. That comes, talk about ups and downs every day, every week, every month, every year. That's the one. But I just want to end it with a happy note. I still think, as long as you know the realities and you get a good mentor, get somebody to show you the ropes, and you've got a good work ethic, and you get a plan of action, and I think you can still be successful in real estate. I truly do think, but you've got to know what you're getting into.
100%. And I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer.
No. Well, you're normally much more upbeat than I am.
I just want to say that just all the businesses I found a mentor for, I was ultimately successful. The success grew as my knowledge grew. So of all the things we talked about today, for me, not for anybody else, not for John, I'm just telling you all that I, as a human being, Robert Newman, feel the number one thing that we talked about today was finding yourself a mentor, because all the hardness gets less if you have somebody providing guidance.
Yeah.
And that can help a lot of you, like how to knock on a door, what to say. Having somebody who's done it many times successfully, anything that they want in return is almost worth it, as long as it's not servitude.
It must be, mustn't it?
Yeah. All right, with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we have enjoyed this show a lot. John and I are always grateful for the listen. If you're on Spotify or Apple, give us a thumbs up or make a comment on those platforms, please. I'd love it if you did. Personally, it would make the world a difference to me as a human. If you'd like to look up me, you can do so at inboundrem.com. If you'd like to schedule a consultation for some reason, you can. You can go to the About Our Services pages and find ways to get in touch with me directly there. John, how would you like people to reach you or call you? Or
thanks, Rob. Just go to the mail-right.com website, look at the features, look at what we've got to offer. I think you're going to be blown away. And then you can book a chat with me and I can give you a demo and we can see if our Mailrite is right for you. And I'm pretty sure it will be. Back over to you, Rob.
Beautiful. Well, that's been our show for today. We hope that if you're a new agent, you enjoyed it. And if for some reason you're a team lead or somebody else that isn't a new agent, trying to pick up some gems to share with your new people, God, I would love it if you just tell John and I that and send us a little note or leave a comment someplace. That's it. We appreciate it. Take us offline.